All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Founder's Cut. Today I'm here with Sydney Robinson, the founder and CEO of Vessl. Before we dive into what Vessl is, I always like to start these episodes by asking the founders to introduce themselves. What brought them to this point in their career where they decided to put it all on the line and become an entrepreneur of a startup, right? So, Sydney, thank you for joining. I would love to just kind of hear a little bit more about your journey to that got you here today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Adam. It's great to be here. I was born and raised in London, Ontario, Canada. I say London, and sometimes people think England, and I wish, but no, I've been in humble London, Ontario, all my life. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering with a specialization in biomechanics. So I started out mechanical, quickly lost interest in car engines, and was really fascinated with the human body. So that's why I made the switch to specialize in biomechanics. And prosthetics is a natural extension of that. So I've been interested in prosthetics since the beginning of my academic career. I then came to Western University and did my master's in biomedical engineering. Wanted to learn more about implant design and medical device design in general. And so I got to do some of that in the upper extremity. And then also at Western University, there's a program called the Medical Innovation Fellowship. So that's a fellowship program modeled after Stanford's biodesign, if you're familiar with it, but it brings engineers, PhD scientists like my co-founder, and medical doctors together to innovate in the medical space. I figured it was a nice foray into entrepreneurship. I'd been interested in entrepreneurship for a long time, but didn't really know that much about it. And this was a 10.5 month program where I could learn all about entrepreneurship, specifically in medicine, which was where I was interested. So that was where I met my co founder and where we shadowed a doctor at a diabetes clinic. And that doctor was meeting with a lot of folks with leg amputations that day. And everyone was in the clinic because their socket wasn't fitting properly, just like if you wear the wrong size pair of shoes. So that was how I came across the problem and loved the fellowship program, the 10.5 months. I loved how dynamic everything was. You're learning 14 new things a day. Sometimes it feels like 14 new things an hour, but I really loved that pace and quickly got addicted, I think, like a lot of other founders. So that's how I'm here.
Yeah, small world. University of Minnesota has a similar program. Actually, same program, I think, just a different campus, right? So I went to that program back in 2016 or 2017. Hard to keep track of the years anymore, but yeah,
No
totally
kidding.
totally love the program as well. I think even when I went through the program back then, similar pain points still existed. So it's been something that's been in that space for quite a long time. So it's very cool that you saw an opportunity there and ran forward with it. So let's talk
Thank
more
you.
about it, right? What is Vessel? What are you trying to solve for?
So our whole mission is to empower folks with leg amputations to lead healthier and more comfortable lives. And the way that we want to do that is by addressing this poor socket fit problem. So if you wear the wrong size pair of shoes, you can get blisters, and that's very painful and frustrating. But we can just take our shoes off and either walk bare feet or maybe wear a certain pair of sandals. With folks with leg amputations, if they're going to get a blister, not only are they wheelchair bound now until the blister heals, but it can also lead to infection, hospitalization, and even another amputation. So it's a very debilitating problem with very negative consequences and outcomes. And that was where we wanted to intervene. So we spent months talking to amputees, prosthetists, and learning all about the problem. And what we've developed is an automatically adjusting socket so that with each step an amputee takes, our isoform socket can adjust its size in order to accommodate for some of those limb volume changes.
What how did you come up with this idea? Is it something that you and your co-founder designed and patented, or like how did you come to this solution?
Yeah, we tried a lot of different solutions, so a whole lot of brainstorming. Again, we focused mostly on the problem. So we really wanted to, we spoke to a lot of amputees. Everyone's story is different. People with limb loss and limb difference, everyone's story is different. And so we wanted to tease out as many different trends as we could. And then we were also speaking to prosthetists because they're equally as affected by, or I should say, differently affected by this problem, but also affected by this problem. And so we wanted to know kind of how they were interacting with the solution, with the problem. And we came up with a bunch of different ideas. We were also looking at what had already been done in the market and why that hadn't worked. So, about a decade ago, a lot of companies came out with manually adjustable sockets. These rely on the amputee in order to make the change themselves. And what we noticed was that that's a big barrier to adoption. Um, I don't want to have to be constantly retying my shoes every hour as I'm moving throughout the day. And likewise, a lot of amputees that we spoke to, not all of them, but a lot of them, also don't want to have to manage their limb volume constantly. And so that was where we saw the need for an automatic solution. So lots of different prototyping. We looked at pneumatics, so using air, hydraulic using water, and then mechanical, just using, think of like gears and springs.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we landed on mechanical, but after fiddling around with the pneumatic and hydraulic designs as well.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when you have a mountain bike with your suspension, right? It's there to kind of give you that support when you need it, but also not necessary when you're on smooth roads and one like that. So totally makes sense.
Exactly.
I've always been a huge fan of like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, like simple, like clean ideas, right? Nothing that's too
Yes.
complex, right? Especially in today's day and age where everything's AI, machine learning, blockchain, like all these things. It's nice to be able to, beautifully understand the pain point and the solution without needing like a secondary degree or something more than that. So I really
Exactly.
really like those because I think like it's also better for the end user too when
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just it's better to like you said like not having to adjust it themselves. That makes a lot of sense. So um as you've been kind of going through this process, tell me a little bit more about some of the things that have surprised you along the way. Like maybe it's on the patient side, maybe it's on the payer side, maybe it's something completely different. But be curious to hear because oftentimes I do these because I want other founders to hear from other founders' successes and struggles. Though.
Yeah, for sure. I think that what we didn't realize going into prosthetics is just how complicated the market is. So I guess if I was speaking founder to founder, one of the things that I would say is research the market a lot before before you try and bring something to market. There's a lot of different regulatory factors and reimbursement factors and patient doctor relationship factors. Like there's so much that plays into this. And so we spent a lot of time researching each of those elements and how they create barriers to adoption for the amputee, how they create restraints for the prosthetist. Like the prosthetist has a lot that they need to navigate when they're going to adopt a new solution or even just design a leg in general for an amputee. So I would say that that was something we didn't fully understand going in. And then something that really I sort of knew ahead of time, but I've been pleasantly impressed with is the network. I find that the entrepreneurship network, whether you're an investor, a founder, an advisor, you name it, people are so supportive and everybody really wants to see each other succeed, especially when you're solving a big pain point. So we have been supported by lots of different groups. And I would just say get that team around you early because they can really propel you forward.
Yeah, I think that's great advice and something that I've heard from many, many founders I've talked to is just the network piece, right? Whether you're trying to build your network or utilize your network or be a part of someone else's network. It's so important, right? And it's something you can't rush, something that takes time to develop, but once you do develop it, it pays back dividends. So, I love that. I love that piece of advice. I want to circle back a bit. You talked about some of the adverse events that happen from ill fit socket for an amputee. What are some of the long term costs for like society, for the healthcare system? Like how impactful is this to like, at the end of the day, someone that's listening to this that doesn't have this problem, they're probably like, so what? Why do I care? Like what is the impact that you see from like maybe just even from a regional perspective? You might not know globally, but just in general, I'd be curious to hear some of the data on that if you have it.
Yeah, what's interesting is that 16% of amputees, it depends on the literature, but we've narrowed it down to 16% of amputees would rather never walk again than wear their prosthesis. And I think that number really illustrates, and that stat really illustrates just how debilitating this problem is. If you would rather be in a wheelchair when you have access to a solution. There's a lot of folks around the world that don't have access to prostheses either. So there's a lot of companies that are trying to solve that access problem, and it's a problem we want to touch on with our solution as well. But it's a global problem. It's a growing problem. Diabetes is the leading cause of leg amputation, and so that's certainly something we aren't seeing going away anytime soon in North America, and in Mexico and in different locations like that. So it is a growing problem, and it's a market that we really hope to disrupt.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that 16, that's crazy to think about. Like,
Yeah.
almost 2 in 10 people would rather, rely on something else or somebody else to get around than have an option to wear a prosthesis. So, and I'm sure it's underreported too, right? Like
Oh,
it's probably
absolutely.
higher than that, or at least people that still use it on a bad day would say that, yeah, absolutely, I'd rather not use it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's very compelling. Tell me more about what your goals are for this year then and moving forward.
Yeah, so our goal for this year is to actually be in market, which is an ambitious goal, but an exciting one. So we are, we're finalizing our design and doing some final material selection type work. And we're doing a lot of user feedback. So we've got 7 clinics across the United States, in actually 7 different states, that want to partner with us for user feedback. So we're working with prosthetist amputee combos, because the prosthetist, this is their whole job. They know how to design the leg best, and so we can work with them to integrate our technology. And they often have amputees who they work closely with when they're trialing new devices, so that's great. We're working with 6 Veterans Affairs healthcare centers on product validation as well, so we're really excited about that. And then we'll be registering with the FDA before we launch our product. So lots of exciting things happening, as well as fundraising, like every startup.
What's your FDA classification?
We're class 1,
Okay.
thank goodness. So
Yeah.
low regulatory requirements, which is nice and just means a quicker time to market.
And then from an IP perspective, you own all the IP to what you've
We
designed,
do,
developed. Okay,
yes. Yeah.
cool.
So we filed a provisional patent last year, and then in January of this year, we converted that to a PCT. So that allows us to expand it to international markets. And at the same time, we filed a utility patent in the US to broaden our claims and also protect a new version of the design that we created.
Who else is on the team with you? You mentioned co-founder. Is it the two of you, or that you have more people on the team on this journey?
Oh, so much more people. We're up to 3 now. So massive team.
It's actually
Um,
pretty big in the early days. I will,
yeah.
I'll agree to that.
Yeah. And no, it's very fun. It's a great team, and everyone is such a good cultural fit. Everybody talks about culture fit right now, and I feel very lucky that we've got such a good tight knit group. So it's myself and my co-founder. We started the company in June of 2022. My co-founder has his PhD in clinical anatomy. He's done consulting work before, so he's a great asset to have on the team. And he actually does all the technical stuff. So he's our chief technology officer, while I'm out chatting away, and doing more of the business side of things. And then last year in May, we hired a full-time engineer, Ed, and he's been fantastic. Again, really great cultural fit. I'm pleased with the company that we're building. And then we've got a slew of consultants who we're working with as well. So Josh Caputo and Jeff Turner, out of Pittsburgh, they've been extremely helpful on the prosthetic side. We work with Trey Bowles, who is our managing director at Techstars, and Ben is a prosthetist who's been working with us almost since the inception of this company, and he works out of New York. So I was able to meet him in person for the first time a couple of weeks ago, which was super exciting.
Yeah, no, I think it kind of sheds a light that it takes more than one person to bring something to market. And quite honestly, like 2022 is not that long ago, so you've been hustling pretty fast here. Let's talk a little bit about the archetype of someone that you want to connect with, right? So there's different buckets, right? There's customers, there's purchasers, there's partners, there's investors. Like if someone's listening to this, whether they directly can be someone that is interested or maybe they know somebody, like what are the types of people that you're trying to get plugged in with right now?
That's a good question. So I'd say there's kind of 4 main bins, and hopefully I remember them all because now I've named 4. The users. So if anyone knows someone with limb difference or a limb loss, it'd be great to chat with them. We're looking specifically for folks with lower limb amputations, so above the knee or below the knee. It's just great, again, to get as many stories as we can, and people who might be interested in trying the device on. Um, Closely related to that are prosthetists. They're our future customers. So it's interesting to hear what their stories are and potentially work with them for some clinical feedback. The other would be investors. All startups are looking for investment. So I'd love to connect with anyone who focuses on med device, hardware, impact, or female led companies. And then the last is what I want to call network builders. So, for example, we work closely with the Veterans Affairs. So, if anyone knows people in the Veterans Affairs or in the Department of Defense, that's a really great area for us to build closer relationships with. And it would be nice to build relationships with those kinds of network builders. So anyone who sees a network like that, or on the manufacturing side, those kinds of network builders would be extremely valuable.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. I think that was maybe five categories. So you under promised and over delivered. As we kind of get closer to the end here, any advice that you have for people out there that might be listening that want to start a healthcare company or just a company in general that you wish someone told you?
I am grateful I'm grateful that I didn't believe people when they said how much work it was going to be, because I don't know if I would have gone into it if I knew it was going to be this hard. And I'm so
A 9 to 5 sounds pretty good, huh?
it does. Some days you're like, oh man, to leave work at work would be so
Yeah,
nice.
when your friends
Um,
complain about a corporate job, you're just like, oh man, that's so
I
easy
know
compared to what you're going through, you know?
you're just biting your knuckles. You're like, don't
Yeah,
say anything.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so, so I'd say I was honestly like happy that I was that naive because I'm so grateful now. Like I'm so glad to be here, and be in the position that I'm in and work with the people that I'm working with. But it is hard. So my first advice is realize that it's hard and that that's okay. Um, Everyone also tells you that it's a roller coaster and that you're not alone, and it feels like lip service and it's not. It's a roller coaster and you're not alone. Like it there have been some times where you don't know if you're going to want to keep going. Just keep going anyways, and it all works itself out. um and the people and the mission are what make it worth it. So just stay as connected to those as you can and you'll be able to get through pretty much anything.
Yeah, I like the roller coaster analogy. I've used it in the past talking to other founders. It's important because like the first time you get on a roller coaster, you don't know what to expect. But if you think of it from the perspective of once you've taken one of those really, really scary, aggressive downhill parts of a roller coaster, you at least know the feeling of it. So the next time it
Yeah.
happens, because there's always going to be a next time, you
Oh
know
yeah.
how it's going to feel, you know that you're going to get out of it,
Yeah.
and like it almost becomes another skill set being comfortable being scared or nervous or stressed.
100%.
I'm not saying like there'll probably be like a case study on founders and their mental health that's like still being written today, of course, but like my point being, and I think your point is just that like yeah, I think be open to it, and I think
Yeah.
you'll come out the other side of it in a good way. um
And enjoy the positives, right? Like
yeah,
enjoy when you're feeling good, just enjoy it. Like
yeah.
you don't need to analyze it. You know that there's going to be low times, there's going to be high times. So just enjoy the high times when they're there
Yeah,
because they also help sustain you through the lower parts.
I think it's important as a founder to have um, things that you do in your company's uh, like to do your to-do list that lets you get small accomplishments and wins. Even just because, like I always said that when I was doing my startup, the things I enjoyed the most were like mowing the lawn or painting the room because I could actually get it to completion, and it wasn't like some unsettled conversation with an investor or a customer, because that's the most
Yes.
frustrating thing when you're someone that wants to get stuff done, is having to wait for someone else to get back to you. And so put something in your process where like maybe it's like your goal is to always get to less than 25 emails in your inbox, right? Like give yourself a
Yeah.
goal that's accomplishable. Maybe that's not even possible because like as a founder it's a lot of emails, but point being like I think that's great advice, is just like uh yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. So, enjoy the wins, and those downs will come fast, but you'll also get out of them quick too. So,
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about startups. You get a lot of just it moves quickly. So you can't you
Oh
can't
boy.
be you can't be stuck in the lows or the highs too long, because the next one's coming right around the corner.
It just keeps going. Yeah, you're right.
Well, Sydney, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to kind of close with? Otherwise, just glad that you could be a part of this and tell a little bit more of your story.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful for the opportunity. So I don't have too much to add. Thank you so much for having me and for spreading the word on founder stories. It's always nice to get a little bit of a behind the scenes look. People like to work with people and invest in people, um, and partner with people that they know. So highlighting these stories is really helpful.
Yeah, the reason I started this was because every time I talk to a friend or a family member and catch up, they'd always be very confused as to what I did. So I think this is like this conversation is one that can easily you can send to friends and relatives as well as like investors or customers or what or partners, right? Because it's just so, yeah, like you said, behind the scene insight. So thank you again, Sydney. Really appreciate your time, and look forward to following your journey.
Thank you so much.